Urban legends are described as stories spread from person to person with a sense of truth to it, usually humorous or horrific. We all know the stories. A man with a hook for a hand, Bloody Mary, it goes to attack you if you say her name in a mirror, or even the stories of serial killers only stalking and attacking victims on a certain road. These stories have been spread from small kernels of truth or even completely embellished by those who want to scare others. Some of my favorite stories are considered urban legends, and they have done a lot to create the modern internet experience. For this Iceberg video, I'm going to be covering a collection of different urban legends that I've found, rather than going from most known to least known. I have a collection of different urban legends from various corners of the internet. These are going to be far-fetched but interesting stories said to be more true than you'd expect them to be. Some of these urban legends will be more true than others. Can you guess which are true and which are not? With that out of the way, let's start the dive down the disturbing urban legends iceberg. A woman is getting ready for the upcoming cold season. Fall is here, but winter is just around the corner. She really wants a new fur coat. She walks into a Burlington and peruses the coats for a while before finding a dark-colored one that she finds suitable. She pays for the coat and leaves for the day. The weather was warmer before she entered the store, but now there's a chill in the air. She decides to try on her new purchase. It fits nicely and the cold air is no longer an issue. She proceeds with her day. An hour later, she feels an itch on her neck. She doesn't think much of it. Sometimes fur coats can take some getting used to. She ignores it, and it goes away. Well, at least for a while. She feels it again, but this time it feels different. She reaches up to her neck and touches something. She just swats at it and pulls her hand back to reveal a tiny squished spider. The woman is grossed out, but just assumes that she got it while walking around. It's not quite winter yet, so spiders are pretty common. It is even a minute later that she feels an itch that continues around her neck, then her arms, and then the first bite. She quickly removes the fur coat and throws it to the ground. This is when she sees the wriggling bodies of hundreds of spiders, all newly hatched. This is an urban legend that has persisted for more than 40 years, according to my sources, but I couldn't find an originating point. The idea of buying any woven material and having bugs or spiders hiding in the fabric has been a popular urban legend for a long time, and this presses on our fears of having something crawling on our skin. Other popular variations of this story include snakes that are hiding in the lining of clothes, which sounds more unreal to me than the spiders. Near the ice floes in the Arctic lies something just beneath the surface. It watches and waits. It has green, slimy skin, long flowing hair, and elongated fingernails. Its eyes barely break the surface of the water. Finally, something catches the creature's eye. A child has wandered into its line of sight. The child is playing along the shore, or perhaps looking for some food. Either way, it's too late now. The creature creeps out of the water, and before the child can even react, they are pulled under, likely to never be seen again. There's just another victim of the Qallupilluit. This is a piece of mythology from the Inuit about a creature that lives near the waters and snatches children. Most likely uses a cautionary tale to keep children from the waters. Before the story was spread around, the waters were probably the place where most children met a watery end. The Qallupilluit, as I described earlier, has green slimy skin and long hair. It is usually described as being female in appearance and uses the children it kidnaps either as food or a source of their longevity. They either use them to keep them young or to keep their hair long, which is how they live so long. There have been many stories of these creatures spread over the years, but most follow the same approach of children going missing near the shores. Sometimes they are just snatched up, while other stories have them being tricked into entering the waters themselves. This is because the Qallupilluit has the power of shapeshifting and is a very good trickster. It shares a few similarities with the Japanese Kappa, which is interesting since these two stories came from worlds apart. Perhaps there is some truth hidden in the disappearance of children near water, but more than likely it's used to keep children away from the waters and safely on land. In the 1800s in Arizona, there was a family that lived in a shack near the town of Kingman. This was a mining town, and a woman named Luana lived in that shack with her husband at the base of the canyon. The pair weren't alone as they had children, but it wasn't much more than a meager existence for them. The husband was a miner and would leave for days at a time to find work and look for gold. He would do whatever he could to provide for his family. That is until one day when he left home with the family mule for the last time. Luana waited a day, then two, and when a week had passed, she began to panic. He was usually only gone for a few days, a week at most. This time she could feel something was different. This time it felt like he wasn't coming back. Now whether he'd been attacked by bandits, killed by wildlife, died of other means, or even just run off and abandoned his family is unknown. What is known is that he was gone and his family was slowly getting hungry. Luana had no means of leaving the canyon, not with her children so hungry already. She could barely scrape together food for a month or so. After the food ran out is when the screams began. The kids would scream day and night that they were starving. She could only cry alongside them as she had no means of feeding them. Then, one night she decides that there was only one way out of this situation. She took an axe from the shed and killed each of her children, one by one. Their screams were silenced, but hers were not. She cried for a while before joining her children. Now they say you can hear the screams of the family if you go to Slaughterhouse Canyon at night and listen. Those wails of agony echo and reverberate, forever haunted by the act of mercy and death. This is a semi-popular story in Arizona, and one that has brought in tourists from all over. Of all the urban legends of Arizona, this one has always stuck with me. Perhaps it's for the similarities to another urban legend that I'm familiar with, or because starvation is such a sad and horrific circumstance. Either way, if you find yourself in Arizona, maybe you should go to the canyon and listen. You might just hear something, like the cries of a woman who saw no other choice. Bloody Mary is one of the most popular urban legends of all time. This is one that hardly needs an introduction, but I'll give you the most generally accepted version of the story. Sometime in the early 20th century, a rumor, or more like an urban legend, began to spread. It was stated that young girls would conduct a ritual to see who their future husband would be. This was done in a way that sounds like an occult activity. Girls would stand in front of a mirror in a dark room. The only light was to come from a candle. The girl would then look into the mirror and see her reflection glowing in the candlelight. The next step is really the most important. The girl needed to say Bloody Mary in the mirror an unspecified amount of times, but usually said to be 3. Then she would see a glimpse of a man in the mirror. This was said to be her husband. When she would meet him and who he would turn out to be were not divined. But this didn't always happen. No, instead she could also see a skull or the face of the Grim Reaper. If she saw this, then that meant she would die before she was wed. This was the start of the Bloody Mary urban legend. It would later be adapted, and this was believed to be sometime between the 70s and the 90s. This change kept the mirror ritual, but now included the need for it to be in a bathroom. The ritual could be completed with as many people as you could fit into the bathroom. One person, or sometimes everyone, would need to say Bloody Mary 3 times. It's then said that the face of a young girl would appear in the mirror. This is where this story has many different alternatives. The most popular is that she would appear as a girl, then slowly decay and become covered in blood. She would scream and you'd have to endure the entire scream or become cursed. This is the urban legend that many teens and kids wanted to do just out of the thrill of what might happen. There's another belief that she would show up and tell you when you would die. Why you would want to know that information at 13 is a big question for me. She would also list dates for your family and friends. Again, not something that I'd want to know. The story has been passed around for generations and has grown into depictions in pop culture. You can see versions of Bloody Mary in TV shows like Supernatural or video games like The Wolf Among Us. Her depiction is very different in these two mediums. The origins of Bloody Mary are just as crowded in mystery as the character itself. Many claim that it comes from Mary I of England. She was known for putting 300 Protestant dissenters to death by burning them at the stake. This earned her the nickname of Bloody Mary. There are also others that believe she is based off of Elizabeth Bathory, a serial killer that is inspiration for many characters. Elizabeth Bathory was known for, and speculated, to have killed over 100 young girls in her time. She was a countess in Hungary who was believed to have bathed in the blood of the girls she murdered. This was done in order to make her stay young forever, or as the story goes. There's actually a whole revised idea around whether Elizabeth Bathory was framed this way in order for her land to be taken from her. I'm not here to discuss the historical accuracy of the character though. Through the acts listed before, she gained the nickname of Bloody Mary and Bloody Bathory. Both of these are considered sources for the Bloody Mary urban legend. With so many different sources, what could the true story be? Well, there's more to this legend than we'll likely ever know. In Ableville, Alabama, there lives a rumor spread from person to person for generations. Whether this person or entity is real isn't up for debate, not for the people of the town. No, they know that Huggin Molly is real. Sometime in generations past, a warning spread from parents to children. A woman at 7 feet tall who wore a long, tattered black skirt. A spirit who haunts the town and attacks any who wander around at night. Who or what she is, no one knows. She is described as having a curtain of long black hair with a rather large head. She has greenish-yellow bumpy skin that some claim has the consistency of sandpaper. Her hands are covered in long, clawed fingernails. She is often reported wearing a wide-brimmed hat. The description of her age varies from sighting to sighting. Sometimes she is old and big, and other times she is young and thin. This is the story of Huggin Molly, a ghost that haunts Ableville, Alabama. The story goes that if you walk alone at night in the town, then there's a chance that you'll encounter a ghost like no other. She is 7 feet tall and said to be as wide as a bale of cotton. If she sees you, then she'll chase you down. What she does next will leave scars, not physical ones, but mental. She grabs you in a tight hug, thus the name. And then when you think things can't get worse, she screams in your ear. The scream is said to reverberate in your head, such a deathly scream that you'll never forget it. Once she's done, she'll release you, and she'll leave you to find her next victim. Reports of the psychological damage she does have varied, but people have reported headaches afterwards. Whether she haunts your dreams or continues to follow after you is speculated but never confirmed. So who is Huggin Molly? Well, there are several origin stories of this ghostly entity. Firstly, she is believed to be the ghost of a young woman who was murdered while walking the streets of Abbeville at night. She was alone that night, and now she screams at others to keep them from making the same mistake that she did. In a way, she is a benevolent entity. She wants to keep people safe and does this first by offering them a hug. The reason she screams is then to get them to take this all seriously, I guess. But this is only one of the proposed origins of Huggin Molly. Another states that she was a mother who lost her children when they were young. Now she offers hugs to anyone who she thinks needs it. Even as a ghost, she still continues her duties. Though this doesn't explain the screaming aspect of the urban legend. The last official sighting of Huggin Molly was in 2010 during a tour of a local cemetery. This was technically the final time she was seen, but there have been a few instances of reports online. These can't be verified for now, so she appears to be in a hibernation of sorts. The urban legend of Huggin Molly is as important to Ableville's identity as the Loch Ness Monster is to Loch Ness. Even if the townsfolk don't regard her as a dangerous entity, they still warn against going out alone after dark. This urban legend is one that I heard from a friend in Texas. He said that he heard it when he was young living near San Antonio. There's a whispering between kids of a serial killer who targets women, cuts them up, and feeds them to his alligators. He's known as the Alligator Man for this very reason. This legend, he said, was something that was talked about mainly in that area, but it did have some renown. It was mentioned in serial killer magazines, macabre tales, and other such collections. The story was different with each retelling, though. Some say that the Alligator Man murdered 20 women in the early 1920s. He would kill them with a gun, axe, or saw, and then feed them to the alligators he kept behind his bar. He lured them in with his charm and took them out before they could find out what he had planned. Other stories talk of the stray animals he would throw into the alligators' pens during parties as a party trick, one that apparently people didn't find repulsive. This specific aspect was one that people spread the most urban legends about. They would be told to keep their pets and animals inside for fear that the Alligator Man would steal them. These stories and the countless others all stemmed from one true source. There was an Alligator Man, and he did commit murders in the 1920s. He also owned at least 3 alligators, which he kept behind his bar. This man's name was Joe Ball. Now, the true story of Ball is a bit different than what the urban legend states, but of course there is a lot of truth hidden in there. Firstly, Ball was a man who lived in a town named Elmendorf, Texas, a small town near San Antonio. He was the son of one of the richest families in the area, a soldier who served in World War I, and that will become important later on. Joe's bar was rather popular for the small town, and he hired a very specific type of person to run his bar. He mostly hired women that he was attracted to, or so it seemed. He was a married man, and when his wife went missing, people started to wonder, though he said she fled to stay with her sister. When questioned by police about 2 missing barmaids who worked at his bar, Job would pull out a gun and aim it at his own heart. He was dead before they could even ask him a question. The bodies of these 2 women would be found, one at the beach and another in an abandoned field miles away. Even these facts are disputed by people in the area. Some people believe that he would never harm a fly, while others claim that he actually hurt and even killed many more women than that. The seed of these ideas come from having unchecked PTSD after serving in World War I, but there's no way to know if this is true or not. Whatever the truth may be, the urban legend of the Alligator Man persists to this day. Different details are tacked on, but most of the story includes some similarities. A Texas man kills women and then feeds them to his alligators. California is a state with plenty of urban legends. From the redwoods at the northernmost edge of the state to the southern border, California is absolutely filled with local lore. So when looking into a specific urban legend to start this list with, I took a few things into consideration. The interest of the urban legend and its connection to a specific aspect of California. This is why I've chosen the Char Man of San Antonio Creek. If you're to travel up from LA towards the coast, you'll find a road called Creek Road. Take this road until you reach a state park by the name of Camp Comfort County Park. This is located in Ventura County, California. It's just south of Bakersfield and in the area of Santa Barbara. This area has an urban legend that goes like this. If you were to drive through this area of California late at night, you might encounter something in the woods. For those who are seeking it out, you'll need to find a specific bridge. This bridge allows passage over the San Antonio Creek, which is where our legend takes place. There are many whisperings about this bridge, from a bride murdered on her wedding day and dumped over its railings, to a ghost bus that can be seen plunging to its death on each anniversary. Our story doesn't involve the biker who was beheaded near the bridge or the remains of a staked vampire hidden somewhere near the creek. No, our legend involves a man for whom the bridge was nicknamed Char Man Bridge. They say on certain nights, passerbys can witness a ghostly sight near the wooded area near the bridge. A burned beyond repair man can be seen wandering onto the bridge. He has burned, peeling skin and is covered in bandages that are just as charred. He is said to attack any who stop near the bridge. His screams echo through the thick brush and trees. The worst part of all this is said to be the smell. He smells of a decaying body being cooked, like that of burnt meat that has been burning for days. The smell is enough to make people gag, and that isn't helped by his appearance. Sightings of the Char Man have existed since at least the 1940s. This has made many connect this specter to the fire of 1948. This is actually where most of the Char Man origins take place. They are either from that fire or from a fire near that date. There are actually 3 main possible origins for the Char Man. The first comes from the story of a man and his son who were caught in a devastating house fire. The father had been burned to near death, and his son went crazy from his injuries. By the time authorities arrived, they found a grisly sight. The son had stripped the burnt flesh from his father's corpse and strung it up in the trees near the fire. He had then hung the remains of his father from another tree. The son, who was also badly burnt, then escaped into the woods. He would then live on as the Char Man. coming to burn and string up anyone who entered his domain. This is the most widely believed version as far as I can tell, but not the only version of this story. There's another that tells of a married couple who were caught in a house fire. As the man lays paralyzed from his injuries, he can hear his wife calling for help from the other room. He wants to help her, but he can't. She screams for help over and over until she falls silent. He soon does the same. The story has the husband become the Char Man, and this is why he can be heard screaming help from the woods. There's even a specific aspect of the urban legend that says you need to scream help into the woods in order to summon the Char Man. This part is not in every version of the urban legend, but it is prevalent enough for it to be a mainstay. All of this is to say that the Char Man has become deeply ingrained in the culture of California. The Char Man has sightings every year and is still talked about as if he's just another resident of the Golden State. He even has his own hot sauce, Char Man's Revenge, which is supposed to be pretty hot. This is barely scratching the tip of the iceberg of what urban legends have spread all over that state. Moving from one side of the US to another, we have an urban legend that takes us to York, Pennsylvania. Well, actually, the story takes place in Pelham Township, a town near York with a population of less than 6,000. The town was founded in 1739, meaning it has a wealth of history and local legends. This urban legend takes place in either the late 1800s or early 1900s. It's called the Seven Gates of Hell and goes a little like this. There used to be an asylum for those deemed a danger to themselves and society. This asylum was built deep in the woods away from the town, so as a way to separate those inside from society. This was initially done to moderate success, but it also allowed those inside to do things away from the eyes of the law. This will come up later, but for now let's discuss what happened one fateful night. You see, there was a fire that started at the asylum. This fire was so devastating and moved so fast that many were not able to escape it. The proximity of the asylum to the nearby town and the nearby fire department was too far. There was no help coming. This was what killed most of the residents of the facility, but it did not kill all of them. In fact, a good chunk of people were able to escape the facility. So a little bit of light in a dark tale, right? Hardly. Those who escaped the fires were said to have been attempting to make their way through the forest near the asylum, where they met up with townsfolk who had formed a mob. They created 7 gates as a way to trap the patients so they could not escape the continued blaze. Those who did make it through the gates were viciously beaten to death by the mob. This act of great evil is what created the 7 Gates of Hell. The urban legend claims that only such places can be created this way. These areas have so much evil that they are the only places where hell and earth are allowed to connect. Continuing with this idea, it is said that if you head into the woods and find all 7 gates, then you'll be sent straight to hell. A place full of monstrosities and atrocities. Why you would seek out a place like this is something that doesn't seem to even be considered in this urban legend. In the woods, there are a few gates that can be seen that lead nowhere. These are thought to have been the gates used to hold the patients back, the ones that led to their death. But there's an alternate idea about the origin of the gates. It doesn't change much of the story. Instead of town folks building these gates, they were actually built by a doctor who worked at the asylum. He built 7 gates in the woods near the facility. No one knows why he built these gates, but it was suspected that he could have started the fire. He wanted to see if he could create a gate to hell, and it seemed like he succeeded. They say if you go looking for the gates, you'll only be able to see the first one, at least during the day. In order to see them all, you need to see the first one, and then the rest will appear to you if it is the right night. This urban legend was very popular in the region and would become one of the more popular stories to be shared. The area where this urban legend takes place is real, but the area is private property, so I wouldn't recommend seeking it out. Besides, why would you purposely want to walk straight into hell? Imagine this. You decide to go on a road trip. You've been waiting all year for this. You'll be driving cross country and staying at various hotels along the way. It's freedom from your normal life, but it's also the freedom of the road. You make it a few states away from your starting point and have become accustomed to staying at the various hotels and motels. For you, this trip is more about the journey rather than the destination. There's so much more to see out there. After a rather long day on the road, you decide to stop at the first hotel you see along the road. It looks normal as many others you've seen so far. You head inside, get a room key, and head upstairs. As you enter the room, you notice something different. Everything looks fine at first. The curtains are drawn, the bed looks clean, and just about everything seems to be in its correct place. But that creeping feeling in the back of your mind just won't go away. You're tempted to ask for another room, but you're so tired that you decide to try and sleep through this feeling. You throw your stuff on the floor. There's no time to unpack and no reason to since you're leaving first thing in the morning. As you lay down, a smell shoots up into the air. You don't know how to describe it. It's worse than anything you've ever smelled before, like someone had left meat out to rot somewhere in the room. You get off the bed and check underneath it to make a frightening discovery. Hanging out of the mattress is a hand, a human hand, and there's dried blood along the wrist. This is an urban legend that has existed for decades. The body hidden under the bed is one of the most prevalent urban legends of the modern era. It's been around as early as the 1980s, but most folklorists believe it started to gain traction in the early 90s. It combines the horror of the monster hiding under your bed and there actually being something hiding under there. In this case, the body of someone who has been murdered, which is just as terrifying and traumatizing. The smell is what connects all of these stories. The idea is pretty simple, with a room being cleaned and rented out multiple times over a period of time. Each time the smell is complained about, but no source can be found. That is, until they check under the bed. The body is found stuffed into the box spring in a state of decomposition. This urban legend varies from retelling to retelling, but there are some core elements that exist across them all. There's always a smell. It's mostly a woman's body, and it's always in a hotel. The most common variation of this is that it takes place in Vegas, where a lot of people congregate for various reasons. The one part of the story that actually is never discussed is the perpetrator of the crime. Usually these stories end with the discovery of the body, but nothing more. They never discuss who the murderer was or how the body ended up curled and fading under the bed. It's just a fact of the legend that the victim was left there for some unknown reason. This urban legend is interesting because it's actually true. The story started gaining traction in the 90s because of a murder that was eerily similar to the urban legend. In 1988, the body of Mary de Oliveira was found in a box spring in the Oceanside Motel in New York. She had been murdered and left there where several guests had rented and stayed in the room over the next few days. None of them aware of what lay just beneath the bed springs. This isn't the only time this has happened. It seemed almost too common in the 80s and 90s for people to be murdered in motels and hotels. The earliest case took place in 1982, when two car theft scammers decided to kill their third member. They fed him cyanide and then strangled him. His body was then placed in the box spring under the bed. It would be days again before the body was found. It happened again in 87, 89, twice in 94, 96, and with the latest in 2010. All these cases were reported in the towns where they occurred, but somehow the urban legend kept coming back to it taking place in Las Vegas. Rather than it happening in a place where you could live, it lives in the city where no one sleeps. This is an urban legend born from truth. This is a story that is as real as it gets. Hidden between the trees and along the old roads of Delaware lies a house. More a mansion than a house, it is said to be built in a colonial style with some oddities surrounding it. Firstly are the trees that appear to be growing away from the house. The trees grow from the ground and almost seem to be running away from the property, growing at an angle. These trees are said to be doing this all around the property in a circle. This isn't all. There's also said to be odd shapes in the windows of the mansion. They are of occult origins in many stories, but most put them down as upside-down crosses. These jet out at the world with an eerie red light which can be seen from the window. Almost like the house is a monster that awakes only at night, one that drives away even the trees. The last oddity said to surround the house is a tree grown on the property. This is said to be the only tree not growing away from the house. Instead, it has an odd shape at the base of it. There is a hole in the shape of a skull, and this is said to be the final resting place for members of the family, or lesser members. This is the urban legend of the Delaware cult house. According to various sources, this house has been an urban legend since at least the early 1970s. These stories all told of the satanic house that could barely be seen from the wrought iron gate that surrounded it. The windows indeed glowed bright red, and the trees tried their desperate escape. Since the 1970s, the urban legend has taken on many more details and horrors. Firstly, the home was supposed to be owned by the DuPont family, an old money family in early America. They came over from France and kept their wealth going through gunpowder and industry. They are a very prominent family in Delaware history. It was said that this was the home of a member of the family, and the property was forever stained by what went on there. According to urban legend, the house was used to have unlawful interfamily marriages. Marriages between cousins may have been legal and common, but this was a little closer than that, according to the stories. The marriages weren't the only thing taking place at the house. It was speculated that the children born from the family marriages were carried there. If they were found to not be fit for society, then they were to be killed and buried beneath the tree on the property. Yes, this is where the skull tree comes back into the story. This was a place used to carry out such insidious acts, and that's the reason the trees grow away from the evil of the home. This house would become a popular local urban legend in Delaware, but specifically on a road that would become its speculated location. Qallupilluit Road, which is actually over the border of Delaware and in Pennsylvania, would become the location of many paranormal enthusiasts. They would flock to the area and go and search for the infamous home. Not only paranormal investigators, but also bored teenagers would tear up this road. It was seen as a great dare by many. They would be dared to go down the road at night in search of the house. This would lead to a new name for the Qallupilluit Road, that being Devil's Road. A quaint name for a road to a house which supposedly contained such evils as child murder. There have been many modern stories about people trying to explore the property along Devil's Road. The first is that if you try and search for too long or get too close to finding something, then a group of individuals in black hoodies in a dark van will chase you off the property. These are said to be the guards for whomever owns the property at this time. What they do if they catch you is never brought up. People who have explored the area have reported seeing the skull tree and the bizarre growth of the trees in the area, but most can't see the house. There are no photos of the house on social media or anywhere online. The trees can be found, but not the property. This lack of a house hasn't stopped people from searching, though. Urban legends have that pull, and for many, they just need to know the truth. Digging through the many different urban legends that exist in the States can bring some interesting new stories. There's an urban legend that originates from Indiana called the Steps Cemetary. This urban legend feels a lot like a ritual to be completed, but it goes like this. In Brazil, Indiana, there exists a cemetery called Carpenter Cemetery. In this particular place exists a site for many paranormal investigators and sightseers. This is home to the 100 Steps. These are stairs with 100 steps that take you from the bottom to the top of the area. They have been remodeled in recent years, but have stood for as long as the cemetery has. They say that there are two oddities here to observe. The first is that if you were to walk up the steps, counting each one on the way, that you would end up with 100. Then when you count down, there would be more or less steps. This happens supposedly every time this ritual is done. Nothing nefarious happens in this version, just a spooky and odd occurrence. In the other version of this tale, if you count up to 100 on your way up, and it is a moonless night around midnight, you'll see someone at the top. The ghost of the first ever caretaker of the cemetery will appear before you. He will then give you a vision of what is to come. This version is said to show when you will die and how. After the vision, you are told to walk exactly as you did down the steps. If you count the exact number of steps on the way down, then the apparition lied to you. You will not die in the way the vision showed. But if you have a mismatched count, then you will meet the exact end that was prophesied for you. There is a third option. If you step off the stairs and try to walk down the path without counting the stairs after getting your vision, then you'll be touched by a ghost. You'll be pushed to the ground by a ghostly hand. It will release you and leave a red handprint on you. It's unknown whether the mark will hurt you or leave a curse. It's just said not to do it. This is the story of the 100 Steps Cemetery. Would you be willing to see how you could meet your end? It's only 100 steps away. Vampires have always been a part of just about every culture in the world, from the east to the west and north to the south. There's just something so engaging about creatures that hide amongst us and feed on the populace. In my research, I was curious about the various vampire urban legends that appear all over the US, specifically. During this search, I found an urban legend from the city most likely to have one. we have a tale set in New Orleans. The year is 1932, and a little girl is running through the streets of New Orleans. She's covered in bandages with wounds visible on her wrists. The city is heavily under the effects of the Great Depression, and the streets are scarce for people. The girl runs down Royal Street, but she's not sure where she's headed. She just needs to find help, and fast. Then she sees a police officer standing on a corner. She runs up to him and starts a story that he has no idea if he should even investigate or not. Of course, looking over the girl's condition, the bruises, cuts, and her pale complexion all set off alarm bells for him. The story the girl told was of a pair of men who had kidnapped her, and many others. They were holding them hostage in their apartment on Royal and St. Anne. The story didn't end there, but continued into what can only be described as a horror show. The two men, brothers, were cutting the wrists of their captives and releasing the blood into cups for them to drink. The cop decided to grab a few more officers and go to the residence. The girl had informed them that the men were gone in the morning and returned late at night. This is when they would do their bloodletting ritual. This would give the officers enough time to at least set up an ambush in the apartment and help any potential victims. What they found when they got there was more than they expected. There were 4 men and women strapped to tables with graying skin and cuts along their wrists. They were alive but barely hanging on. This was in the main room, while a room off to the side smelled of death. This was where they would find several deceased bodies with marks similar to the ones currently tied up. The policeman kept his nerve, and they waited until the evening to spring their trap. The two brothers were caught with a bit of a fight. They thought this was odd since they were rather scrawny and not very tall. The 2 men were wrestled into submission eventually, and began talking immediately. The 2 brothers, John and Wayne Carter, made the startling claim, and one that hinges this entire urban legend. The 2 brothers claimed to be vampires, and they would kill again if they were not jailed, or even better, executed. The trial was quick with the pair being tried as murderers, with some retellings claiming they were tried as serial killers. The sentencing was just as quick as the pair were sentenced to death row. This is where the story takes a turn based on where you hear it. The first claim is that the pair were executed together and placed in a joint grave. When the bodies were to be exhumed later, they were both gone. This is where the validity of their vampire stories supposedly emerges. Now, the other version claims that one brother was executed first, with the other being scheduled for a later date. When the body of the first executed brother was to be exhumed, it was gone. When the brother was going to be questioned in jail, it was found that he was also gone. The pair were never seen again. This is one of the most popular vampire urban legends to spread from New Orleans, but not the most popular. It's a story that is spread around during Halloween and other spooky festivities. Just one of the many vampire urban legends to take place in the not-so-distant past of the US. I want to give a big thanks to my Patreon supporters: Astrovert, Mew1770, Comically Odd, Mads Francis, Keely Hegg, Masta Jags, Joe Gillespie, Miriam Reyes, Meme Tendo, Austin Henshaw, Icy Man, and Nora Kingsley. Thank you, everyone. I hope you all have a good night.